Hello and welcome to Exam Revision, and in today's video we are going to look at the effect of price on supply, and we're going to look at supply curve shifts. And our learning intentions for today are that we are going to explain the impact that price has on the supply of an item. We are going to explain what a supply curve is, and then we're going to describe the impact that supply curve shifts have on price. So we'll start off by looking at supply. And supply is the quantity or amount of a product that suppliers are willing to sell at different prices. So it's the quantity of a product which suppliers are willing to sell at different prices. Okay, so the suppliers are supplying the shops or they are supplying the consumer. So it's the amount that they are willing to sell at different prices. And the reason why this is important is because most suppliers will supply more of a good when its price increases. So they'll supply more of a good when its price increases. And the reason for that is because there is potential for higher profits. So the other reason is because smaller or less efficient suppliers who cannot compete at lower prices will also enter the market when price is higher. Okay, so if there's a high price, suppliers are willing to supply that product because that means that they can make a profit. If they can't make a profit, well, then they're not going to supply that product to shops or to the consumer, because for the supplier, there's no point for them in supplying the product unless they can make a profit. So if for any reason the price has increased on a certain product, so that could be to do with demand, or that could be to do with one of the other factors, maybe such as like seasonal factors, or maybe the product is in fashion and it's in a fad, or any of the other factors that we looked at previously, which can increase the price of a product. So if for whatever reason the price of the product has increased, well then it will allow suppliers to also increase the amount of that product that they are supplying, because it gives them the greater chance of making a profit. And that means that we can say for most goods and services, it's not always the case, but most of the time we can say that supply increases when price increases, and also supply reduces when the selling price reduces. And that leads us to looking at what's called a supply curve. And a supply curve is a graph that shows the amount of a product that a seller is able to supply at different prices in order for it to be efficient for them and for them to make a profit. So what we can say about a supply curve is that in general, the supply curve will show that the higher the price for the product, the more the supplier will be willing to supply. So we can see that by looking at our supply curve over here. So if we take, for example, here when the price is €2, if we draw a line, we can see that the quantity supplied is around 200 of that product. But when the price increases, so say if we look at the price at now €3, we can see that the quantity that they can that they are willing to sell of that product is now 300. So from looking at a supply curve, we can agree with this statement up here, that a supply curve will show that the higher the price of the product, the more the supplier will be willing to supply. And in a supply curve, just as with a demand curve, there are other factors which can influence supply. And although price is the main factor which influences supply, it's not the only factor. And when any of these factors come into play, we can see a shift or a movement in the supply curve. So as it says here, an improvement in supply conditions will see the supply curve shift to the right. So here we have that at this certain price, the quantity is down here. But with a supply curve shift to the right, okay, we can see that the quantity has increased. So what we see there is that an improvement in supply conditions saw the supply curve shift to the right. However, a negative in supply conditions will see the supply curve shift to the left. So as we see here, at this price, we have this quantity, but because of a negative in supply conditions, we now have a shift to the left. Okay, and that shift to the left shows a negative in supply conditions. Okay, so thanks a million for tuning in to this video. Hopefully it improved your knowledge on the effect that price can have on supply and also on your knowledge of supply curve shifts. So our learning intentions for today are that we would explain the impact that price has on the supply of an item, and we have done that. We said that we would explain what a supply curve is, and we know what that is. We know that it is the amount of a product that a supplier is willing to supply at different prices, that it shows that. And finally, we said we would be able to describe the impact that supply curve shifts have on price, and we saw that they can have an increase or a decrease in price. So thanks a million again for tuning in. Make sure to stay up to date with all our social medias for more updates, and have a nice day.